Sharma from India Diversity Forum. Today we have a renowned psychiatrist expert when it comes to mental health, Dr. Harish Shetty, who will be speaking to us under diversity workshop. As I was saying, that under our various activities and engagements for our members, we try to we invite experts from various fields and try and seek information from them on various issues that affect diversity, equity, inclusion. And as we all have been seeing that in India at the moment, the issue of gender equality with a focus on women is very, very important. And we have requested Dr. Shetty to speak on that. I always like, whenever I've heard him, he says that women feel that they ought to be experts in everything, and he's going to speak further on that. And that is not a requisite for perfectionism, is not a requisite for you to deliver your duties the way you think that you ought to do. And also we have requested that there is, as we all know, and we have been speaking at various forums, the issue of conscious and unconscious bias, the perceptions that we carry since we are born on various things, and that leads to alienation of our co-workers, our friends, and how in the corporate sector that affects the mental well-being of employees, and what the HR professionals, the leadership can do in that regard. So allow me just about 1.5 minutes to give you a brief introduction on Dr. Harish Shetty. Dr. Shetty is a leading psychiatrist with extensive experience in the field of mental health, especially in connection with disasters. And he has worked at Latur after the earthquake and at Kandla after the cyclone for a year. Each evaluated psychosocial processes at Jabalpur after the earthquake for a human rights group, and also worked at Gujarat after the last riots for 6 months. He's a distinguished faculty at Symbiosis, visiting faculty to various universities. Dr. Shetty has been appointed as a member of National Testing Agency by the Union Cabinet on behalf of the HRD Ministry. So the Union government, our government at the center, has been using his expertise for quite a few issues. He's also been identified as one of the 17 young mental health workers by the World Health Organization and invited twice for training in the year 95 and 96. Dr. Shetty has been a consultant at Sevadan De-Addiction Center and the National Addiction Research Center, Government of India funded. He has aided in championing the rights of children, very close to his heart. And when we were speaking on this, and he said, मैं बच्चों पे बात करूंगा. I said, नहीं, अभी आप बच्चों पे इधर मत करना, because यहाँ पे we are looking at the employee when it comes to India Inc. But yeah, of course, he will bring that issue in. Children are very close to his heart, and he has been championing his petition to Maharashtra Human Rights Commission to abolish the practice of segregating students. If you all remember, this is not very long ago, segregating students and putting them, those who scored less marks, in separate divisions. His petition led to the abolition of the practice by the state of Maharashtra. And his petition to 2015 in Bombay of learning disability detection centers in every district of Maharashtra. Dr. Harish Shetty has been training the judiciary for over 2 decades at Judicial Officers Training Institute, Nagpur, Maharashtra Judicial Training at Uttan, Mumbai, and the National Judicial Training Academy at Bhopal. He trains them on mental health, the Juvenile Justice Act, of course, all mental health related, and issues related to marriage and divorce. Dr. Shetty trains sensitive areas in India and has worked with the medical fraternity at Afghanistan in the treatment of PTSD on behalf of an NGO Action Aid. He's funded Maitri, an organization. He's the founder of Maitri, and he does a lot of work regarding mental health under that. He's been a key witness, if you all remember, in the infamous Panvel and Thane orphanage cases of child sexual abuse, where convictions were granted to the offenders. Dr. Shetty is a trainer, he's a researcher, he's an avid blogger, and he's evolved and conducted a refresher course for school counselors with SNDT as a partner. He's been invited at Salzburg seminar in 2003 for intensive seminar in leadership and health. As you can see, I was trying very fast to, put his, no, I haven't done justice. He runs a podcast when it comes to COVID, along with Dr. Joshi, and he does a lot of work. But you can see the bouquet of services that he brings with him. So I am going to leave it now here. Dr. Shetty, all yours. Welcome.
Thank you, Vidyutama, for that generous introduction. And let me start by saying my famous sentence. God is the champion of diversity. Man is the champion of structure. God is diverse. And probably it might take us millions of years to understand how diverse the creative expression of the cosmos is. When I say this, I would like to say that though in corporates and in organizations, we are trying to bridge the gap and help the human brain understand, accept, and include various diversities, it's a tough job. We can do it gently and slowly. And the most important aspect of understanding diversity and improving inclusion is pure awareness, the journey within, as much as is important with the journey outside. The words on the visiting card is the journey outside, but the awareness and mindfulness inside is as important. And when I say this, I would first start by saying that every human being, institution, community, nation is biased. Awareness of the bias improves understanding, improves inclusion. Lack of awareness promotes discrimination and trauma, those whom we do not understand. Let me start by my first unconscious bias, conscious and unconscious. Well, I could never stand somebody who drinks a lot of alcohol. It was drilled in my mind as a child. They are bad human beings. And in the early part of my training, I found it difficult with those who were admitted with alcohol to my ward during my postgraduate training. And in life, many a times we do not transact the education. We transact our beliefs. We transact our deep-rooted beliefs which are unconscious. And it took me many years. And what did I do? I exposed myself to two de-addiction centers, sat down, listened to stories of people who take alcohol. And then alcohol abuse is a problem. Maybe it's a disease, it's an illness, it's a behavior which can be corrected. The second most important bias I had, very unconscious, I was not aware as a child, as a teenager, as a young man, was those who repeat a sentence again and again. Those who are extremely meticulous and regimented, 7 baje utho, 9 baje breakfast khao. I just could not manage such people. Also because my father was very meticulous. This obsessive personality, and remember one thing, these meticulous guys run the world. They are CEOs, they are prime ministers, and they are HR directors, and they run the world. But that I could not, and it took me again a long time to really understand all this. Well, when you are stressed, you transact your beliefs. When you're stressed, you transact your deep-rooted, irrational thoughts and beliefs, which are very, very important. And as you transact your beliefs, you realize after the damage is done that what you said, we call it slip of the tongue, slip of the thumb, when you send a WhatsApp up and down, is only after the damage is done. So the third unconscious bias I had was again Sindhis. Sindhis, people who speak the Sindhi language. It took me a long time again to expose myself to a lot of understanding of the culture. I traveled to Sindh also. I was lucky to go to Sindh and Lahore in Pakistan years ago for a lecture. And it took me. So what I learned is, if you're aware of a certain bias, get educated, get exposed, and be aware. So let me start with a question to each one of you. How many of you resonate with this? I am a vegetarian. Anybody can unmute themselves and say, yes, I am a vegetarian.
Yes, I am.
Yes, I am.
Okay. And why
I
are you?
am.
And why are you a vegetarian?
Yes, I am.
Ayushi, yes. Ayushi, Cho, you are a vegetarian. I know.
Yeah, I am a vegetarian.
Absolutely.
You got it right.
And
Religion.
why are you a vegetarian? Why are you guys vegetarian?
Begins with our parents' influence.
Okay.
Their dietary habits become our dietary habits.
Yes. And it becomes a hardcore belief, isn't it?
A religion then makes it a hardcore belief.
It automatically becomes a hardcore belief. Anybody
Yeah.
else would want to give me a different explanation why I'm a vegetarian? Apart from parents?
I think Dr. Harish Shetty, it's more ingrained.
When we think of
that it's
non-veg,
healthy thing for us. I'm sorry, Raju is speaking. I'm sorry, I'll probably take it after.
Yes. Raju, bola na.
basically, when I think of non-veg, I think of the pain which these animals go through once we're going for something non-veg.
Okay, so that is the logical reason for you, and the empathy you have towards all living beings, which makes you feel that you should be vegetarian. A lady also spoke something. I didn't get you, ma'am.
Yes, Dr. Harish, it's me, Gohar. I believe that the thought process when you say, I'm a vegetarian, comes from what Raju just said, that, you come from the thought process of not harming the animals. Okay. Also, at the same time, I believe it comes with a thought process that non-veg is unhealthy and veg is healthy. I've been hearing this for quite a long time. And, I get into a lot of tiffs. You say we kill animals. What about you killing plants? You don't kill them. They don't have a life. So I guess I get into a lot of debates. And I think this comes from our parents, they put this in our head that this is good and this is bad. I think that's where the unconscious bias is. I don't know. This is my
So unconsciously, it is parents, it is logic, it is pain, empathy, and you believe that vegetarian food, and it's a belief. Now, when does a belief becomes a bias? All three of you can answer separately. Anybody? Ayushi, you want to start? Yeah.
Yeah. So I remember this happening in school with me, where I will make friends basis on what they eat. And today it's a different thing. Today I've learned, I've become better. But if somebody is eating non-veg, is not even supposed to be my friend.
Yeah.
Because we cannot sit together in lunch. And if you cannot sit together in lunch, you cannot gossip. There's no point in being friends. Began there for me.
I think exactly that. वही होता है, कोई अगर vegetarian है तो एक happens almost every time. Table पे अच्छा vegetarian क्यों है, किस लिए? What could be the possible beliefs? Sometimes on the interview table, since I'm from HR, sometimes even in normal inclusion in various. अच्छा इनके लिए अब अलग से सोचना पड़ेगा. Could they be doing it to be standing out? I would say it walks into the bias when you start all on who the person is. Vis-a-vis, what they eat, for example. And this is just one in the
It's so natural to have that. And I still remember a friend of mine who was a pakka vegetarian. I generally don't eat meat. I'm slowly moving away from non-vegetarian food to vegetarian food, but still, as a coastal Mangalorean, I can't stop fish. Anyway, when he came to my house, he brought water to drink. So he said, I do not drink any water in the house of a place where. So I got a little upset, but then I learned from where he was coming, and that's where. So a belief can become bias. I will not sit with somebody. I will not speak to somebody. I'll have friends who are only familiar with the food I eat. So that is something that can happen. So again, the post, I work for stray dogs and feed them. How do you look at this sentence? Anybody? Supriya Mandle, Mr. Mandle, I saw for a few seconds, but he absconded. Yeah.
I guess magnanimity, those are the words that you suddenly associate with someone like that.
Okay.
Animal lover.
Animal lover. Okay. Thank you. आणि कोणाला काय बोलायचं आहे? Anybody else would want to say something? किसी और कुछ कहना है?
Like for dogs, we say they are very faithful to the human being.
Yeah, dogs were the first animal which were domesticated by Homo sapiens 10,000 years ago. And they're very loyal to the master, but not so loyal to each other. That is something we need to look at. Anybody else? Do you have any words for those who always go and feed stray dogs? And
Dr. Hari, Supriya here. I was on the previous slide. When you mentioned that your belief can become a bias, I would like to say it is also your preference, right?
absolutely.
You prefer that, right? So it's not necessarily a bias, but it's your preference. So it could be it would be a thin line between a bias and a preference. So
Agreed. Only thing is, see, it becomes a bias when you're very hostile to people who are not vegetarian. That's what I meant. That's the only point I meant. But you're right, Supriya, absolutely right. I work for stray dogs. Anybody else would want to say something? I don't like quiet audiences. I like vociferously rebellious. That's my bias. An audience who fight and argue with me.
Dr. Harish, sometimes it's regional as well.
Yes. Padma,
I
yes.
remember, so I belong to Kashmir. I remember in my school days, my mom gave me chapati as a variation to the lunch. And a lot of my friends came back and said, hey, you don't have rice. Okay, we'll do something for you, we'll arrange something for you. So regionally, for example, we are rice eaters, we are non-veg eaters. So a lot of times we really don't, that becomes the bias later on. When you see not many people not taking non-veg, that becomes a little strange.
I'm speaking to a bong.
No, to
So it's a
Kashmiri.
different perspective Madam gave, and as a child, it people empathize with you कि तुम तो चावल खाते हो, ये क्या चपाती अगले दिन मैं तुम्हारे लिए चावल. Okay, now office goers, a lot of office goers don't want to go to office. They said online मजा आ रहा है, boss का चेहरा नहीं दिखता है, नहीं तो boss सामने और काम देगा. There's a group of people who actually say this. Any
Introverts.
introverts?
I love
Yes,
online work could be introverts, people who don't like socializing.
Who's that?
Sonal.
Sonal, yeah. Sonal, would want to say this. I love online work.
I guess
don't
it
like
gives a
online
lot of flexibility. Seeing the slide, I think that's what comes in my head.
Okay. Oh, very nice, very nice.
I personally don't like
Being
online
in
work.
being in comfort zone, bit lazy, not getting up ready for the early morning. I think we are getting into that mode now.
Yeah, see the layers of expression. And
Yeah.
when I put a line, you see so many layers. Beautiful. I'm absolutely beautiful. How many have said, these guys, I can't stand these guys at all. How many of you can't stand people in your office? One or two persons. Don't nod your head.
I think
sideways
I
before
can
ask.
say that very proudly. I can't stand certain people. So
Isn't it
it's
normal?
like, so it's like you just have to keep it murmuring under your breath and say, okay, just get through the day.
Yeah.
This place pays you, so just shut up and work. So yes,
काम करो यहाँ से बिल्कुल निकल.
of course.
And sometimes when you say I can't stand anybody, there may be no reason. कोई कारण ही नहीं है. Just like that. वो जो है ना व्यक्ति जो बैठा है, उसका चेहरा ही नहीं अच्छा लगता है मुझे यार. वो खाना भी आवाज करके खाता है. वो यार कैसे बातें करता है. So sometimes you have no connection with the person. You've not been exposed to the person much. There's nothing you know about the person, but still अंदर से ऐसे आवाज आती है. There's noise inside that says I can't stand you, and that is where awareness starts. Because in life, nobody can choose their parents or their colleagues in their office, and awareness, and you can only choose your in-laws and even change them if you like. But ऊपर वाला पूछता नहीं कहाँ जाओगे, ये मलिक के घर पे जाओगे, कपूर के घर पे जाओगे. So you cannot choose your parents and your in-laws and your colleagues, and it's so important to understand that when you feel strongly for somebody or you feel resentful against somebody without reason, you need to ask yourself, अंदर से टटोल के पूछना चाहिए कि अंदर से क्या हो रहा है. That's where awareness starts, and that is very important. So let us look at gender blending, as Vidyotama told me 100 times. Gender पे कुछ होना चाहिए. She almost held my choti and said, gender pe kuch hona chahiye. And let me look at, in my experience, how do genders blend? Sometimes it is out of fear. Lafda nako, Vishaka guidelines hai, andar se kuch bhi hua, to dheere se bolo, soch ke bolo, reflect karke bolo, informal संबंध रखो, and do not drive the person home and leave the person to his house or to her house. ये tension लेने का नहीं. And it's driven by fear. But I would say that if it's driven by any motivation, awareness can start. It's perfectly all right. It's perfectly all right. Sometimes it is gender driven, in the sense that I'm a man, I would like to behave in this manner. I'm a woman, I would like to behave in this manner. This is what I've been taught when I was a little child. Childhood comes in a very big way. I still remember this man who said, देखो ऐसा है, मैं गाड़ी जब चलाता हूँ तो I avoid all women drivers. A very common thing. My driver says, साहब वो कौन है देखा आपने? I mean, so deep rooted. And sometimes these biases are so strong, and it might take a generation for it to go, but sometimes we can dent it in our lifetimes. We can dent it in our lifetimes. So sometimes when you get these thoughts, suddenly the slip of the thumb on a WhatsApp and a slip of the tongue from your vocal cords gives you sentences which makes you think, and you can write down the sentences. I always do this exercise when somebody comes to me, Dr. Reddy, that in-law of mine, I mean, he's not educated as much as mine. And I tell them, write the sentence down and just stare at the sentence. When you stare at the sentence, sometimes you get new meanings on the word educated and uneducated. Literate, illiterate. Education is not only about degree, education is about life. And when you stare at the sentence and put in a book and open the page and again look at this sentence after some time, it might get hardened, but on a nice day, you might look beyond the sentence, and that I think is very, very important. The third is experience driven. I have been told with respect to understanding gender or other diverse issues. I have learned my lesson. I'm looking within, and through my experience, I've learned that I need to change my narrative, my workspace, and my narrative outside my workspace, and that is experience driven. Attitude driven, and that also is very important. Sometimes attitudinally, about walking hand in hand, as seeing their father, seeing their mother, as seeing in gender blending inside the workplace. Last is HR driven. HR. I still remember HRs having workshops, and a lot of workshops on gender. Even Supreme Court has asked the National Judicial Academy to do a lot of gender sensitization and gender awareness. And a few days ago, I was conducting a session with people who have worked in COVID, and they worked 2 years continuously without a holiday, and fantastic work. And I posed a question in a state of my country, and I posed a question on anger. And one guy said, yes, anger, I deta hu do char. Then I asked him, kisko dete ho? And he said, I beat my wife, senior position. And it was a Socratic moment for me. It was a different moment for me. I looked into his eyes and said, this is the time of his awakening. And I held his hand and said, from today onwards, we will stop this. And then he said, why? And he said, my father used to beat my mother, and I've seen this. I said, you're not your father, and your wife is not your mother, and you need to look behind. In fact, when I train senior government officers, they talk about this attitude very openly. And when I do these workshops with senior government officers, we start by exploring how did the anger start? Because this anger, I can hit somebody and he or she cannot really pick me back. It does not start overnight. It starts with a lot of stories in life. It starts with a lot of experience in life. It starts with all the casual conversations you have heard as a child. So opening this Pandora's box, HR guys and HR professionals should learn the skill to do this in different institutions. The HR professional in the same institution may not be able to sit and do a workshop in their own institution because there's a lot of familiarity. But when you go to a new place, your skills of helping people go beyond their anger and looking at stories will be much better. And which means I propose to you guys that you may be HR of a corporate, but I'm proposing something very crazy. If two CEOs and two MDs are friends, the HR professionals can cross the boundary and do workshops on not on their own, not inside their own company, but in two different companies. You go to somebody else, some other place, and he goes to some other place. That will also save your money for inviting outsiders. HR-driven workshops are very important, and most of these workshops should not focus on alien principles related to gender blending. A lot of culture, a lot of normal culture, a lot of culture which is sensitive, a lot of contextual learning needs to be utilized when you do gender blending. So this was my experience when I said I really was very angry with people who drink alcohol. I went and I started going and worked at two places of where two addiction centers, and I worked there for 12 years, and it took me 1 or 2 years to understand the context, but also did something else. I've been through a lot of isms, all isms. I've traveled across different ideological poles. And actually, when I view riots in India, I had positions which I had taken, but to understand a little more and also to understand the context of diversity, I went and worked at riot-affected places in India. One of the most important ones is Gujarat. Now, let me tell you an experience. I met a woman who was working with the victims of one community. And I found that she was working because she herself and her family had faced a lot of trauma when it came to violence. When I sat down and I was having bhakri and sabji on the ground, I slowly explored very unconsciously, and she also was talking about what you are doing in life and about my isms and my ideological leanings. And what I learned was the pain and anger inspired her to work for her community. I said, will you cross the border and also work for the human race as a whole? He said, which means what? Which means, would you also open your centers to victims of other communities? She stopped for 1 minute, looked down, and she said, it's very difficult. I said, yes. as you are aware to really help somebody who's like you and who has faced violence like you, can you open your doors and expand your horizons and your exercise to do it? It might be difficult initially, but that feeling inside your heart that whoever has committed violence against you is not a generalized phenomenon. Move away from stimulus generalization where you hate everybody who belongs to the other community. And this also helps you to really break boundaries inside your office. So in office, how will it play? Well, as an HR professional, you'll find that there are some people who are happy with all the HR work you do, but some people would not be very happy with all the HR work you do, and they would actually continuously crib and hassle you. And when you say so, I'll give you an example here. As a teacher in a college, I found that there were certain kids who were not happy with my teaching at all. And any questions posed to them inside the class, they would come with hostile answers. And what I did at that point of time was I told them, let me meet you in the canteen, in the college canteen. And when I met them, I just asked them a very existential question. What is it that you don't like about me? Is it how I teach? Is it how I dress? Is it how I look? Or is it from which community of which part of India I come from? They said, it is nothing, sir. It's nothing. We just wanted a little more familiarity with you. And we found that you always are partial to the children who answer all the questions in the class. And this helped me to break the barriers and also view them with a different light. So knowledge can help you break barriers. Exposure to a difficult population can help you to break barriers. Practicing what you should, though if you do not believe it, it's against your belief, but this is what is required in the workplace, also can change you. And this changes attitude and behavior. Said long ago that what are the words we utter in our workplace? Well, sometimes it comes from the lips. It comes from nowhere, it just comes from the lips. It doesn't go anywhere, and it's forgotten. It's completely forgotten. Sometimes it comes from your Vani, vocal cords. Thoda, Vani is a little close to the heart. See, the throat is midway between your brain and your heart. Just look at the throat. It's midway between your brain and your heart. Okay. So sometimes it comes from only your vocal cords. Hi, hello, how are you? It doesn't come from anywhere. Sometimes it comes cognitively from the mind. Sometimes it comes emotionally from the heart. But slowly, what we talk, which is important, can come from your being, which is inside you. I still remember a story. I told one of my patients to go and give a note of leave of absence from his work to an HR he or she is suffering from. He said, I can send it to the office or email Dr. Shetty. There's no need to go. I said, no, I want you to go because you are an ambassador of change yourself, because when you exchange what you think and what you feel about your illness and why you want your leave, it will be much better for the HR person to understand the context and also to understand your situation. And he went. And she said, keep the paper on the table. I understand, you can go. And he went back. Was not important at all. It was not necessary at all. And I said, also, she must have read the note, but write a mail to her and say that, Dr. Ma'am, it's like this, that you understand me, but in my office, what has happened is a lot of people talk different things about myself. And it's important for you to know, this is why I came to actually meet you. So sometimes a meeting, an innocuous meeting, an innocent meeting helps you to understand what a person is facing in his office, whether it's gender or whether it's something else. So what are the HR exercises for gender blending? Occasionally, you can elicit automatic thoughts, automatic feelings, automatic sensations, and automatic behavior over an issue. Say, for example,
Dr. Harish, sorry to interrupt. What does GB stand for?
Gender blending.
Gender blending. Okay.
Yeah. Gender blending. So this is a very good exercise because ultimately life revolves around how you view your automatic thoughts, automatic feelings, automatic sensation, automatic. I'll give you an example. The Prime Minister withdrew 3 farm laws. What happens inside your mind suddenly? Sentences come. It could be different sentences for different people based on your leanings towards any ideology, based on your views about farmers and their problems, and based upon your own understanding or based upon what you have read. But in those awareness of the automatic thought, like for example, if I pose a question, India lost the World Cup battle right in the first match when they looked very tired and very, very jaded. And if I put a picture of Kohli, people who love cricket would come with different answers. But when you believe your answer, your awareness is poor. When you look at the thoughts that come to your mind and allow it to move on the screen, and you look at your feelings, anger, they lost, we should have won, sadness that they lost, we should have won. And sensation, my God, I do not want to watch this match again because India is gone. And behavior, I switch off the TV. This can happen through different situations. Put a picture of Trump or Biden. You will see that a lot of us will get automatic thoughts and automatic feelings. This exercise can be done through four ways. One is storytelling. All HR people should not be SOP driven, should not be driven by compliances. And I hate these words about it. I don't like this word. There's bias against this word. Also, they should sit down sometimes and help people reflect on a story. It could be any story which probably resonates. And in this exercise, you can elicit the automatic thoughts, automatic feelings, automatic sensation, automatic behavior. Why does this exercise? This exercise helps you to actually reflect on yourself and not only on the story. It helps you to become more aware and look at the biases and prejudices unconsciously. And I pick up stories which are familiar with the audience, or stories which are not familiar at all, absolutely from a different culture. Sometimes I also ask them to change the ending of the stories. And that change of ending also reflects and brings about understanding to the person. And I do not read those stories. I tell them, when you have written, tell me, sir, what do you think? How did you think about this ending? Where does it come from? How did you think and where does it come from? Helps them to go within and really touch things which could have been similar, and that also causes increased awareness. And that not only works between genders, but also works across all diversities. Peer reflection is also a very good exercise. And here, probably a story or probably an event which has happened in the office, and helping each person reflect and tell them, how did you feel about the event? What would you have done? What are the sentences you would have uttered? And I still, and the guy said, I would want to, can you come up for a coffee? And there was nobody around, and both of them kissed each other. And she left. But after that, one of them felt that this was not right. And though I did it, I did not want to do it. I think it was not right. That person blamed oneself and also blamed the other person. And when this came up in the HR meeting, questions like, why did you go to drop her? You should not have gone to drop her. Would not work at that point of time. What is very important is peer reflection. What would you have done if it would have been the other person? Is something which is very important for us to discuss. At the same time, this event can be discussed without the people being disclosed, and we can also do a peer reflection. What would you do in that given situation? Fourth exercise is reflecting on current affairs, not agreeing with each other, not really discussing with each other, but able to experience and accept point of views and acknowledge that people may have a different point of view is also one good exercise which I do all the time in corporate. But the most important exercise is childhood reflections. Most of the biases, whether gender, whether LGBT, whether environment, whether animals, most of them starts from childhood. And this entire reflection of one event in childhood or one story of childhood or one incident of childhood or one topic about childhood brings about a lot of awareness of self. So a lot of men who feel very hassled when they're instructed by female bosses, or a lot of women who feel very hassled when they're instructed by male bosses, childhood reflection is a good activity which one can actually do. Analyzing your statements once in a week. I ask these people to once in a week, do an audit of the sentences you utter. Once in a week, or once in 2 weeks also, it's a very good exercise. What I said generally in the office, what I thought largely, what I wanted to say, what did I feel, and did I injure anyone? And it's not the thought. Write down the words and the sentences you uttered. Being aware of the sentence and words can also bring about a lot of change. So my dear friends, this is very difficult. This state of mind is very difficult where words you speak are very respectful, where integrity is very high, when feelings are very.
Dr. Harish, would you mind please to go back to the previous slide for a second? I just missed on writing down. Thank you so much.
So this is a very interesting exercise which we do when we ask them to bring the audit to the office, and in a spirit of acceptance and in spirit of facilitation, not that somebody is brighter than the other. Somebody is better than others, and this also helps cross. Now, ultimately, we need to reach this stage at some point of time in this birth, next birth, whatever you think. So the point is focusing on, people say that no, he's a nice guy, but his tongue is bad. Who is interested in his niceness? We are interested in what he says, what she says. So words make a lot of difference in life, whether it's inside your family or whether it's in your office space. And to look at this acronym of why words as a person, mankind, brings in a lot of inclusion in the workspace. People ask me, why do you say that? I said, I'm not going to build vertical structures for every diversity issue. I remember I was called to a multinational for a parenting chat. A lot of internal discussion, and the four diversity guys, they have to have meetings, they have to write the reports and send it across, and then, well, there was too much time wasted. But when you look at do not build structures on every diversity. It's like in a school teacher has to do environmental awareness, HIV awareness, mental health awareness, gender awareness. Unless you build a bond across all issues, this word for every issue is against God is a champion of diversity and man is a champion of structure. So this is something which is very important. This is a very serious issue in corporates. The office spouse, the travel spouse, the soulmate, and the sex buddy. Not very uncommon. In my 25 years of practice, I've seen this. And what are the implications? Let me tell you a very paradoxical statement. When there was an affair in the office between two human beings, gender improved in a certain person. So we do not know how it goes. But I'm not saying, I'm not advocating this at all. But I'm saying this also has these four terms have a very serious implication. And I see largely the implication is there's a lot of favoritism that happens inside the office. There's a lot of unequal distribution of tasks that happen inside the office. And also, you cannot sleep and forget. And that is something we need to know. Love cannot be restricted to numbers, but romance may be restricted to only one person. Now, when I said gender and mental health, I did not mean gender and mental health, I mean gender and the mental health issue. Well, when somebody has a difficulty in his or her mental health, there's a lot of stray sentences which are thrown around by everybody, including some HR professionals. These are documented by me across the last 20-25 years. And this guy has given a note that he is depressed and needs to stay away from work for 4 weeks. And actually, the HR guys recall that he or she was very chirpy at time. And when he was called to the office, he could not come. And when his parents came and told him, the HR person, that he is having depression, he's under treatment of a psychologist. But HR said, no, but he's actually very chirpy. And yes, and the father had to say, my son actually has a very cheerful exterior. He's an extrovert and he can hide his feelings beautifully, but he breaks down at night and early morning. And if you feel that somebody is very well and you see the evidence to the contrary, always understand that what you see in 4 to 6 hours may not be visible to an HR professional. This is one of the important sentence which a lot of people get devastated by. Now, when you hear somebody, a lady sent a note that she has a lot of pain all over, and HR person said, "What is the dash cause?" I mean, we gave her a great praise. We did everything. There's no cause. I do not like people taking a long break. We need to do something about it. But the fact is, depression is very cunning. It can come in different disguises. It is invisible, not like the fracture of the hand. And what is very important for us to understand is that the cause can be so different. Third is, the school principal or an HR professional might feel that this guy or this girl is actually manipulating me. I don't think she requires. She has escaped from a project, and she was supposed to do that project. She's running away, probably because she has something else and she's using mental illness as an excuse. You have every right to take a second opinion. You have every right to have a panel of mental professionals with whom you can send. And that is what you can actually do. And what is very important for you to understand is that a lot of people who are ill are viewed as manipulating because you don't see a fracture, you don't see a stretcher, you don't see a test which has dengue positive. You see a human being, man or woman, who probably is unwell and is not visible. Many patients or human beings faint in the office, and this fainting is extremely common. It probably is due to extreme fear. It's probably due to a story in life which is really disturbing the person all the time. And when something happens which is visibly scary, there's a lot of fear in corporates that things should not happen here. And if something happens here, we will actually be faulted. So when something is visibly bad, there's a lot of fear. And many say, "Ye apne ko ye aadmi, about this guy, I don't think he has fainted thrice." But it could be panic attacks. He can recover after some time. In panic attacks, the fainting goes down. The frequency and the intensity slowly goes down. Sometimes it could be a body, emotions trapped in the body where somebody can hyperventilate. It can happen inside the office. And a good psychologist will be able to help the person. But sometimes we have disbelief. Oh, she has taken extended leave for depression. We gave her 4 months leave. She's asked for 2 more months leave. Well, and these cases are good examples for educating yourself. Not by looking at the visibility, at the facts on the table, but by having a chat with the family, by making a home visit, because the HR teams are very big, and actually sitting and finding out. And that what happens with this is our awareness increases, our empathy increases, and we're able to put our finger on the problem and help the person. Now, I have faced this all this in my life. And I still remember in a very good company, there was a man who had bleeding inside the brain in the office. He was admitted. He became all right. It took 3-4 months in a hospital, and then he got depressed. And then I treated him for depression. But all the emails which that employee would send to the HR, there would be no response. And HR later told me in a friendly chat after everything got sorted, I was delaying his resuming because I believed that he had a bleed and he had depression. He would not be able to function on his work. But I told her it's very unfair for you to do it. And sometimes this happens. Sometimes ask for details, a lot of details to satisfy oneself, and probably give a date. And give him a tough time at times, and a tough task, which probably he may not be able to do, and he or she may leave. And I don't want this mental business. And if he has attempted suicide, my God, I cannot take this anywhere. I'm not too sure whether he will do it again. He might jump down from the office. And if any employee jumps down from the office, it has happened at many places, most of the time the HR closes their door to any empathy towards mental illness. I'll give examples in hospitals where people have jumped down from the hospitals. Those hospitals have stopped admitting mental ill patients, forgetting that the heart patients also die in the ICU and they still admit heart patients. So these are the HR fallacies I've seen when it comes to beliefs and biases towards mental health. Well, HR excellence is also highly visible. I see a lot of great HR professionals. I've learned a lot from them who work with difficult issues, who actually help reintegrate the employees back. A lot of them research what worked and what did not work when it came to myths, when it came to beliefs, and the transformation of the senior management by the HR. And when they view a lot of cases across time, they actually are able to tell what has worked and what has not, and that really improves. And HR excellence would mean a lot of HRs conduct these myth-shattering exercises. And this myth-shattering exercises during peace times helps improve compliance or improve inclusion and understand that diversity with respect to mental health. When all these things are conducted with HRs, what is very important to understand that the team itself has to be mindful, aware, if they have to build awareness across the country. Edward de Cunha fell sick on a ship of Shipping Corporation of India, and he was asked to leave. Edward de Cunha fought this case in the High Court and the Supreme Court and won the case after a long gap of 15 years. There have been cases where we have assisted employees to get back their rights, and he has been reinstated. So but Edward de Cunha's case against SCI is one of the landmark judgments where a person who had mental illness in a workplace was asked to leave. My dear friends, all the HR guys should really empower your companies to use a lot of CSR on mental health. And all the HR professionals should understand that 1 out of 7 Indians are mentally ill. So if you're able to help somebody in your office, you may be able to help somebody else in your own family. Because 1 out of 7 would be one person from your extended family. And this figure shows, this is the figure of NCRB 2020, latest, 10% increase in suicides in the country. So bringing mental health systems, very important. Again, 2020, last time I showed 2019, family problems and illness are half the causes of suicide in the country. family problems and illness. So family mental becomes extremely important in your intervention. The poor, the housewife, and the less educated are more prone to suicide. And this is, by the way, UP has one of the highest incidences of sexual abuse, child sexual abuse, but a lower incidence of suicide. I mean, very, very strange. And this is something we need to really research. And I'm on it. I'm going to send some students to a few villages and sit down and see what exactly is the truth. As I close, I do not like these vertical structures. LGBT, mental health, environment, यार सभी को बांधो एक धागे से. And this vertical systems for every symptom, everything which is diverse is not the way things can work. If you do not build connections between issues, you're going to be loaded with 100 diversity issues, and those issues which are normal also will become diverse. India is a place where every person says, I walked the extra mile, but most of them walk the normal mile and they view the normal mile to be extra. So my dear friends, my teacher, Herman von Prague, once told me, Harish, psychiatric illness, it's an analogy. Psychiatric illness cannot be compartmentalized. It's like the cloud. They are linked all around, and they could be different at different places. So my dear friends, my way of looking at it is diversities should not multiply in your workspace, and normal people should not be put in the diverse categories. And at the same time, we cannot build institutions and interventions over one diversity and other and build a lot of tall buildings which are not connected to each other. So I close this entire sharing by saying that God is the champion of diversity, man is the champion of structure. Accept diversity as it is, but remember, the core intervention has to be mindfulness. Mindfulness increases your hut size. Mindfulness actually also increases your acceptance of people. And this is not a lifelong journey, but it's a journey across thousands of years. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Shetty. That was really, really good in the sense that you weren't giving them, do's and don'ts like a teacher, but you very beautifully wove everything into your various instances and stories, and it came across very well. I'm opening the forum for questions. Please raise your hand, and it will be nice if you need any clarity on any issue, please ask Dr. Shetty. So do we have questions, Ayushi? Are there in the chat box? Is someone raising a hand?
Not yet.
Not yet. So till then, Dr. Shetty, I have one question.
Oh, there are two.
And
I saw two hands raised.
Okay, there are. Great. Can you speak?
Can you begin?
Yeah, sure.
Yes,
Okay.
okay, please.
Thank you, Dr. Shetty. Like Vidyotama said, wonderfully briefed. I will straight away jump to the questions, and I have two. One is, largely in manufacturing sector, and I'm an HR professional. So sometimes it happens that, like the law mandates, you're supposed to do training sessions, etc. But there is this resistance to do gender sensitivity sessions at the blue collar space, because it's, primarily see there are more men. It's like, why give them ideas if they're none? If there are no female workforce, why do you want to do that? So any opinion, views on that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I would rephrase the title of that entire workshop. That is one. I would not pose it as, I'll tell you an example. In fact, when we went to Kandla to work with the salt pan victims, we said mental health workshop. They said, get out, we are not mad, we know everything. They said, hamare yahan thoda wo, they used a colloquial word which happens, and we wove the mental health into that. So sometimes weaving the issue with a different entry point is important. That's number one. Number two, talking to the blue-collared workers in their idioms, not the language, idioms. And that is important. Say, for example, I would go and conduct a session in a juvenile home, and I would use some words which are not acceptable to a corporate or to an audience which is different. In entering their idiom space. Number 3 is storytelling. Relating them with stories, kahani. All HR professionals or teachers should be great storytellers. And remember one thing, my dear Sonal, each one of us is a great storyteller. We don't attempt.
I agree with you. I absolutely agree.
Number 4 is, what we have done during difficult times when we could not penetrate any group, is finding allies among these guys. And really, so it is when you cannot enter a zone, it's a challenge for me and so many others to find out kaise ghusne ka. तो हम लोगों ने ये सब 3-4 चीज सीखा. And lastly, when you find change, there are tears. I'll tell you what. When I was addressing this group of 300 people who have worked day in and day out in the state of India, I asked them what changed in their entire relationship with their spouse. And it was a very intense, I mean, I located myself inside the brains. I had what you call that in IT terms, मैं उनके ज़हन के अंदर घुस गया. And then one girl said, my husband stopped abusing me. One man said that I view my wife's contribution to my family to a very great extent, and she respected all the work which I did. So stories, the real life stories of those blue collar workers will actually help you. And you may use a different title. That's the best way to go, as far with my experience. There could be so many other ways also, Sunil.
No, I'm sure. Thank you. No, you've opened a lot of thoughts there. One more question. For example, any sort of illness, mental or otherwise, you'd mention a line, generally try avoid details, I mean, that's not imperative, but, sometimes you need to know, because then how do you help? I have a cancer patient in my, in the office, and he was really not wanting to talk. I mean, somebody had to breach. So I got someone who, whose wife had suffered. I said, why don't you speak to him?
That's a very good idea. That's a fantastic idea. That's a fantastic idea. But what happens is you have to know the details also to help him.
Exactly. That's what I was saying.
It's not to assess whether he's lying or. So there in mental health, there's a lot of stigma. Yeah. And so it is so, see, I use the one technique of personal disclosure. I tell them I've taken antidepressants at the age of 23. My first cousin committed suicide. One person is bipolar in my family. Number one. Number two, I would use an employee, as you said, who has recovered from mental health. Number three, I view people of 5 types. One is cognitive. Usko articles dena, padho ye dekho, ye hai, and they change. Second is emotional, and we use the principle of Mahabharata. In your team, who's the person who has had a rapport with that person across time? It could be, these two people could be culturally also associated. So use the philosophy or the technique of management where you can put people, right people. At sometimes you have to, I break the ice when things are beyond repair. There was a woman from a corporate, big girl, had a daughter who was suicidal. HR guys broke their head. She did not move. And very well educated. I had to say this to her. आपको आपकी बेटी दीवार में टंगा हुआ आपको देखना है या जमीन पे चलते हुए देखना है? आपको आपके बच्चे से प्यार है या नहीं? And I was scared after saying this because I did not know what will happen. But she turned around. So यार कुर्सी में बैठ के creatively इधर उधर कुछ ना कुछ करने का. Don't give up, यार. Don't give up. And that I think is important. Sometimes you might fail, but when you try with 10 difficult people, 4 will succeed. So that's what I do. I don't know. You are all experienced guys there. I should ask you all what is it that you do, which I've learned a lot from all HR professionals. I've had a lot of friends in the HR industry.
We keep trying. I was all, at least I would say.
And sometimes tears also help, huh?
Yes.
Honestly.
Everything works.
Yeah, in the sense it's not a strategy, but automatically when you feel like crying about somebody's pain, and then things change like this. So don't be ashamed of your tears in interaction. And only thing is, find out if it's your need or if it's the need for the entire situation.
True. Fair enough. Fair enough. Thank you so much. Thank you, doctor.
Any other question we have here?
Yes, Vidyottama, I have a question.
Yeah.
Dr. Harish, what is the simple use to break the unconscious bias? Maybe as an organization, we are way far off to conduct mental health awareness workshops because, I think everybody on the platform agrees. There's a lot of stigma when it comes to mental illness. And the one thing that probably I could gather when you were speaking to Sonal is probably coin it in a way where, people don't feel it's a stigma. So that's one thing. But what would be your one, mantra that you could share it with all of us on the platform, especially it would be my takeaway. How do we break this unconscious bias that we will build up?
We are all biased. You and I would say menu of mantras. In life, always have a menu, whether it's food, whether it is anything. And the menu of mantras would be, like you said, you have done the course in NLP, and that's also one of the most powerful tools to not to break a bias, but to reach a bias. Sometimes biases break when there's an awakening happening, and the person was against you across life and had mental stigma. He becomes your ambassador overnight, like a convertee is a diode, as you say. Sometimes I'll tell you a woman who came and said that my daughter is not ill. Usko to kisi ne, and he would go on and go on and go on and go on. And ये आपको किसने मेरी माँ ने कहा, मैंने कुछ नहीं किया. So slowly what happens is the superstition, the definition of a superstition is a false belief which is accepted with intermittent doubts. So once you create a doubt over a bias, then it starts breaking. Then it starts breaking cognitively. It might not break in the being. So that is the second. Third is a lot of engagement, a lot of dialogue, a lot of baatcheet, and a lot of experiences. Like suddenly somebody is helped by a person he never ever believed that the person from this community or this caste or this religion or this language would ever help him. It's shown in Hindi movies, na खून देता है ना वो अचानक वो villain का बेटा खून देता है. So this is also very important. But number 4, no substitute for improving your state of being. Your state of being. If you slowly increase your hug space, and that happens automatically when your awareness is better, with the thought that you are temporary travelers on this Mother Earth, automatically it hugs. But when you are depressed also, you may be excessively altruistic, which is also very, very dangerous. But when you are balanced and when you are able to view yourself as a small speck in this entire universe, and that spiritual connect also helps you. So when I worked in this in the riot affected area, as I said, this woman would not want to accept victims from the other community. Then we sat down and had a chat. Unless you cross that boundary, unconscious bias will not break. And sometimes it has to be a conscious attempt. Thank you. Come on, Aniket.
Thank you so much, Dr. Shetty.
No, sir. All good, sir.
Dr. Shetty, before the next question comes, I ought to thank you for one thing. I can see the name of one of my ex-colleagues and good friend, Gina Ghosh. And I think I'm meeting her after 5 to 6 years after leaving Percept. Gina, is that right? There is Gina Ghosh here.
I know her.
Yeah. So I think it is thanks to you that we've connected.
Personally, and she's a friend of mine. And she SMS'd me that you are speaking, so I would want to join.
Okay, great. So I think Supriya is asking a question. Supriya, please go ahead.
Vidyottama, hi. No, sorry, I think it was not a question. It was just a thumbs up for your bonding with your friend. Nothing much.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. डॉक्टर शेट्टी, एक चीज मुझे पूछना था जब तक अगला सवाल आता है, दैट इज we are all talking about the connections and everything that you've given. It's all very brilliant, but how does I don't know, I might be wrong, there are so many HR people, but these conscious and unconscious biases that persist with us because we carry them from our home. There's genotype, phenotype, as we hear in biology we studied. We carry with us throughout, and even the HR professionals carry to some extent. As you said, we have bias. How does, if you look at gender equality, it affect the mental well-being of a woman, where she's constantly told, "Arey nahi, tum nahi kar sakti ho. You're a woman. It's a man's job." This is in normal jobs, or a woman who feels, because she's conditioned that way, that no, this is not something that I can handle. And what sort of intervention can come in from HR department in that regard?
I think there are three things here. One is that women who have broken the glass ceiling are the best people to answer this question, and they will give you the range of experience and how things changed microscopically and macroscopically. That's number one. Number two is, I would not use the word self-esteem. It's a very narrow word. It's a very small word. But women need to acknowledge other women when they grow, and that is not always seen, ma'am. Women also inherit beliefs of patriarchy. So women acknowledging small gains of other women also it's not only improves the self-esteem, but improves the, see, I'm not interested in self-esteem. We American self-esteem being improves the being of the entire person. HR people should conduct a lot of gender awareness activity for men about women. Like a prime minister said, we should tell our boys to behave, to improve the life of the woman. Sometime back, I don't remember when. So, and that is a slow process. And if it is supported by the top management, not only by words, lip service, but by actual practice, then there is a revolution. Number three, existential interaction with the men. About their I spoke about the words, analyzing your words. Existential interaction with men about the sentences they utter is extremely important. Sometimes one needs to be very provocative and firm to break these sentences. Ultimately, what hurts? Sentences hurt. Words hurt. Number four is, if I were an HR at this point of time in life, I would see to it largely not out of a sense of reservation, but see that equal opportunities for men and women are given when they are chosen, and a lot of intermingling gender neutral activities are also typical. There was one activity which happened in the Yashta Center in Pune. I still remember this event very closely. I'd gone to do some workshop, and there they had this. IPS always feels that they are lower than IAS. They are the female. They are the female gender in the hierarchy. So this man, my friend, he put them in a hostel, and at night he had an exercise where the IPS and the IAS were playing ball, and they would kick the ball, do this, do that. And then they were all in a trance state and they enjoyed the entire situation. They felt equal. But the next day, the IPS wore their colors and sat in a different place. And then they said, देखो ऐसा नहीं है, मैं जब स्टेज में था, कलेक्टर को उसने पुष्पगुच्छ दिया, कलेक्टर को दिया पर हमको नहीं दिया. हमारा क्या दोष है? हमें थोड़ा मार्क्स वो प्रीलिम्स में कम, इंटरव्यू में थोड़े मार्क्स कम मिले, इसके लिए हम IPS में, हम IAS में नहीं. So ability, the desire to express and the space allowed to express for both men and women is important. And I would not break gender bias only by activities of gender bias alone. I would break gender bias by a lot of peripheral activities which also influences the gender. And I would say not few, many of activities. But I'll tell you, all these women and men who are there in HR, anybody, if they're passionately involved in their work, baithe ideas aayenge, because human being has a brain which is tremendously creative. And when there's passion, baithe snan karte, khate, you get ideas. So infinite menu of activities is important.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
So now we are coming to the end. Do we have any more question here?
So I would like to add to what you've just said,
Yes, ma'am.
that we'll do activities, we'll do workshop with men for awareness when it comes to female roles. Over there, my only concern, or the very first concern, is resistance.
No, so what I do is that I'll tell you what I do. We do a lot of workshops in NGOs. I go back to stories of as a little child, the man and the mother, the man and the auntie, the man and the sister, the man and the father and the mother, the teacher and then the student, and the sir and the student. The secrets of biases, apart from genes, is in the stories of childhood largely. And if you're able to get into that state where you are facilitating, तुम स्कूल में जब जाते थे, क्लास में बैठते थे, तब तुम जब डब्बा लेकर बैठते थे, तब क्या होता था? And what are the sentences they would utter? What are the sentences they've heard from their parents? Very important. I'll tell you. There are people who have said, my mother and my father, when they would walk, father would walk 8 steps ahead of the mother. And even today, they would say that when I married, my wife still walks far away. And I still slow down. Even these small things, if you change, the big software, there's no need to do big PowerPoint presentation, gender, वो gender का word को बिना use करके तुम काम करो, बहुत बदलाव आएगा.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Anyone else? Or can we thank Dr. Shetty?
And then also, Vidyotama, if you get all the HRs one day together and ask them what worked when it came to this issue of gender, they will give you successful stories which they should share among each other, which can be used by each other. Because these guys are a treasure of information and experience. And sometimes we don't acknowledge our own experience.
Dr. Shetty, we begun that process.
Thank you.
And in fact, हमारे 10 councils हैं और 4 के meetings हो गए हैं. We are doing exactly the same thing.
You,
so when you're saying, I think we are on the right path, because best practices sharing हो रहा है, and then we will collate it all and we will share among all, so that what they haven't used or what other organization is doing, which they can customize to their organization. We are in that process. So thank you very much.
Thank you,
Dr. Shetty, thank you so much for immediately, spontaneously saying yes. I remember the day I called you, you had just landed at the airport to go to your village and immediately said yes. And you yourself called and said, what are the issues that ought to be discussed? And this is very rare, and you have, based on that, created your presentation and answered every question. And what I feel is everybody would have appreciated, which we will get. Some have written in the chat box. Is not directly saying ye karo or wo karo, that sort of thing.
Human beings are very resistant to advice.
But your advice has come so subtly within the stories that it's very easy for us, to identify those situations and then work towards that. I hope Sonal will agree with me when I'm saying it. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Gratitude, and we are indebted for you for sparing so much time.
Thank you. And we wish Roar to recover fast from his cold.
Yes, he will.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Doctor.
Thank you, sir.